What does it feel like to die? Hi, I'm Glenda. I'm your neighborhood death doula serving Carroll County, Maryland, and I'm making a series of videos to talk about the death and dying process on the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and social levels. In these videos, I'm going to talk about the death and dying process, what happens, and the reason why I'm doing this is to help you understand the process. And we have some reasons why it's so important to learn more about death and dying. So, the first reason why it's important to know about death and dying is just to be able to understand what's happening, to understand the context, not only for yourself, but for your loved ones, right? If you have a person in your life that you love very much who is transitioning, who is dying, not understanding what's happening makes it really difficult for you to meet them where they are and to understand how they're feeling, what they're going through, and how to help them. So, another reason is that it provides less anxiety and fear. So, the more you know about something, the less anxiety and fear that you will have around this topic. And let's face it, death is one of the biggest fears that people have. And whenever you're in this feeling or this state of fear and anxiety, it makes it much harder for you to manage your own feelings, to process your own feelings. When you're going through something such as the transition of a loved one or your own death, your own transition, if you are currently in a disease process that will eventually be that is terminal, right? So that subtracts being in this place of fear and anxiety, subtracts from the quality time that you could potentially have in your last months or weeks, days. Waiting sucks. Okay, so waiting during the dying process can suck. Not only for the person that is transitioning, because we try to mitigate suffering at the end of life, but it can still be a very, very difficult suffering process, a labor, if you will, for the person that's transitioning. And it's also very difficult on caregivers, loved ones, and family members. It can be difficult. That's the reason why I'm working on this series to help you make it as comfortable as possible. And so, understanding the death and dying process, the symptoms, the signs of where we're at in the process can help someone who's having a lot of anxiety about waiting, about the uncertainty, right? So, we can not really guess when someone's going to die based off of their symptoms, like how long. I can't give you an exact, like it's going to be 5 hours, 43 minutes, and 2 seconds. It doesn't happen that way. So I can't give that to you. But understanding the symptoms and where you might be along the trajectory can help ease some of that uncertainty that can come along with waiting at the end of life, both for the person who is transitioning and your loved ones. And again, that helps you understand how much time you might have left to do the things that you want to do and say the things that you want to say, work on some of these meaning making and legacy projects if you choose to do those. Symptom management is another reason why you need to understand what's happening at death and dying. Is this sign or symptom part of the disease process? Is it a side effect from a medication? And then do we need to adjust medications to make this person more comfortable, or is it simply just part of the dying process? It's important to understand, to be able to sort that out, to make your loved one or yourself as comfortable as possible in the dying process. So there are certain symptoms that are universal at death, and then those symptoms can also cross over with people that have a certain disease process, such as dementia or Alzheimer's, that don't indicate that you're dying at all, but we can see those symptoms or signs in people that are dying. So that can be really confusing and alarming for loved ones and individuals who are in the dying process. Comfort, again, that goes hand in hand with medications, managing side effects from medications, but also just comfort not only on the physical level, but on the mental, emotional, spiritual, and social level. Understanding part of the dying process can make it more comfortable for everyone involved, right? If you have an understanding, this again goes into meeting people where they are, and that's much of what we're doing in death work, is meeting people where they are. So it can be comforting to you to know what happens, it lessens your anxiety, but it can also help you comfort other people who are really struggling with this process and processing what's happening. If you understand what's happening, for example, if you have family members or friends that you disagree with on what should be happening, what kind of care we should be receiving, it can bring comfort to you and to them to understand psychologically and emotionally where they're coming from, why they think this option might be the best option. Okay, and that can help us avoid lots of family drama if we understand the process a little bit more. When it comes to making choices and power of attorney, it is so important to understand the death and dying process. If you have to make decisions for someone that you care about, it can bring a lot of guilt if you don't understand what's happening, right? If you don't understand how traumatizing things like CPR can be on a very frail body, and you're having to make a decision whether we're going to prolong someone's life or if we're going to let them go with some dignity and some kindness, it can be really difficult. That is not an easy decision to make for a person. So if you don't talk about the death and dying process with your person and understand fully what it is that they want for their own death, to have a good death, making that choice can be heartbreaking, and it can leave people with guilt and trauma for the rest of their life. So understanding the death and dying process can help make you more comfortable about making choices if you're making medical decisions for someone that can't make those decisions, if you understand what's happening in that process. Also for yourself, for your own advanced care planning. When you're trying to plan your own death, your own good death, for when that time comes, or if you're young and say something happens like you have an accident, right? If you don't understand the death and dying process, how can you answer some of these very difficult questions for what kind of care you would like to receive depending on the situation, right? So you have to understand what death and dying is like in the process. And in this case, we're mostly going to talk about longer processes, such as dying from an illness and being on hospice. So I hope that helps give you some idea of what we're talking about in this series. Make sure you comment below if you have any questions. I also will include my email address if you have any topics or specific questions you'd like me to answer about the death and dying process, or being a death doula, or services. Email me or leave a comment below. And then also don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can get notifications. I'm going to talk about each sign and symptom that happens along the way in the death process, and not only tell you about what's happening, but what's happening with the people and the caregivers around you, psychologically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, to help everybody understand where everyone is coming from so we can have a good death, a more comfortable, kind, and compassionate death whenever and wherever possible. So thanks for watching. Bye.